Zhou, who is also known as the Stone Demon, is an overpowered martial artist who has spent his whole life studying how to beat people with his bare hands, and yet, he still can't bag himself a wife. His story begins when he announces his presence to the world by entering a martial artist competition which gathers the nation's sects. The Stone Demon has already beaten a considerable number of contenders to reach the final rounds of the competition. He reveals to be from the Ren Tian sect when introducing himself to his next opponent. Zhou is faced with a swordmaster who painfully puts down his sword when he finds out that Zhou doesn't fight with a weapon. The guy is looking to make it a fair contest. The crowd goes crazy after witnessing such sportsmanship. The two fighters take their stance. The master makes the first move, but he slips on his blade and hits the splits like a gymnast after sensing Zhou's tiger aura. The master quivers in pain as he acknowledges Zhou's strength. The fangirls from his sect rush onto the stage to make sure that their senior is okay. They are upset with Zhou for defeating their guy as they snatch the blade and leave the stage. The judges announce Zhou as the winner, and the next contender steps up. He is confused when his opponent pulls out some string and makes a net with it. The Stone Demon wastes no time and takes it away from him, but this leads to a tug of war between the two, which causes the thread to snap. The opponent falls to the ground devastated because the rope was given to him by his wife. She makes a swift appearance on the stage by using the crowd as her stepping stone, as if she was on Takeshi's castle. She politely concedes on behalf of her husband before comforting the mortified man. Zhou tries to apologize as the couple leave, but she makes it clear that he will never be forgiven as tears run down her face. She even goes as far as to curse him to be single forever. The Stone Demon is declared the winner, but his next match doesn't even start, because his opponents are disqualified when it comes to the judge's attention that they are a duo, which is against the rules. The pair are not bothered by the verdict because they seem to love each other, and they express this as they make comments about how Zhou has never been in a relationship, judging from the way he is looking at them. The Stone Demon is announced as the winner of the tournament. Later that evening, he notices that a lot of couples are enjoying the post-competition celebration. Zhou is confused that all the losers seem to be happier than him. His hope of further acknowledgement gets crushed when one of the judges comes over to tease him for being alone. He cries because he's the best martial artist around but feels so lonely. The following day, Zhou gets some tea and feels like the crowd at the competition didn't like him, but he has won honor for his sect, so he tries to find comfort in that. However, experiencing the pain of being single is still eating away at him. He thinks back to how Grandmaster Ren made him obsessed with martial arts by telling him that he's the future of the sect because he was a genius. This made him drill his juniors with training while his Grandmaster used to play board games. Zhou is sure that this is why his subordinates all fear him. He gets up to rush back to the temple to explain things to his Grandmaster, but he pauses in his track when he hears Yu calling to him. He turns to find her tied upside down, surrounded by the Black Axe Gang. They give him a hostile vibe when he tries to ask them what the issue is. The residents scurry into their homes and close the doors when they sense the trouble coming. Yu headbutts and breaks free from her bondage when one of the criminals eats her pastry. She continues to beat him till the criminals decide to move their interaction to a more discreet location. They are confronted by the gang leader called Lu. Zhou assumes that they are monks based on his bald head. Lu reveals that his beef with Yu is because she broke their weapons. He also gets annoyed when he figures that Zhou thinks that they are monks. His minions get excited as they ask their boss to show the Stone Demon his unique skill. Lu tries to display his strength by uprooting a small tree, but he almost injures his back. His subordinates save him from embarrassment by pointing him to an even smaller one. As he pulls it out, Zhou uproots a huge one to their shock. Lu doesn't want trouble and pretends to be a monk. This allows him and his men to escape with their lives as they accept the tree as a gift. Zhou buys Yu a meat bun to replace the one she lost since they are acquaintances. The girl is very grateful and informs him that she has made him another weapon. He reminds her that he uses kung fu and pleads with her to stop making weapons for him. She doesn't listen and presents a metal hula hoop which has blades on it. Yu demonstrates how it can attack enemies from all sides. She vomits from the motion of hula hooping. Zhou realizes that she got the steel to make the weapon from Lu and his men's axes. That is why they were so angry at her. He feels terrible for helping the bad person in this situation. As soon as Lu and his gang get to safety, he expresses his frustration that they had to retreat after losing their weapons while getting mocked for his bald head. The boss promises to get his revenge, but his speech is interrupted by Yuan, the illiterate swordsman. He also calls Lu a monk as he asks for directions to their temple. He wants to spend the night there. The bandits get annoyed and surround him for calling their boss a monk. They are all dumbfounded when Yuan misreads the character on the back of the tops. One of the criminals tries to correct him, but Yuan shuts him up by landing a devastating kick. Lu takes great offense and orders his men to take him out. He recognizes the illiterate swordsman as soon as he sees the red blade. Yuan has been traveling around the country challenging strong warriors, and he currently has a perfect win record. The boss is also knocked back after his subordinates take a beating. He concedes and tells the wandering swordsman about Zhou in hopes that they will weaken each other during their fight so that he can swoop in and take his revenge on them both. Meanwhile, at the sect, Master Ren puts Xiang and some other subordinates on watch duty because he doesn't want Zhou to catch him playing board games upon his arrival. The Grandmaster meets up with his non-warrior friends to show his skills. Soon after, Zhou and Yu return, and they are greeted by an excited Xiang who clearly has a crush on Zhou. She also tries to delay them to allow the other lookouts to inform their master of his star pupil's arrival. Sadly, their signal is a little too obvious as they set off some fireworks that catches Zhou's attention. The lookouts fight among themselves for such a blunder. Things get worse when Zhou rushes to Ren's side when he hears a cry. He busts into the building to find their master getting beaten by his non-martial arts associates for cheating. Ren tries to play it cool like they were doing nothing as he welcomes his prodigy, but Zhou chokes him with the hula hoop weapon because he knows what his master was doing. Meanwhile, Yuan the illiterate strikes again as he mixes up the Ren Tian sect with a different one. He goes in to challenge them, but the master of the school refuses to back down and orders his disciples to beat him to death. Unfortunately, they all get defeated by Yuan. The batted master tries to explain to him that he has completely misread the name of their sect. This triggers the swordsman to give him an explosive slap. The subordinates plead with their master to get the illiterate out of their institution. The master falls to his knees and concedes that they are the ones who are not educated, as they misspelled the plaque on their temple wrongly. He even expresses his gratitude to Yuan for correcting them. The idiot swordsman falls for the fake admission. The master is dumbfounded when Yuan gives him a copy of his nonsensical novel that he intends to publish. The boss of the sect commends his book just to get him to move along. As soon as he leaves, the master is livid to learn that Lu was the one who lured that fool to their doorstep. He believes the bandit leader is trying to play tricks on him and feels like he needs to defend his honor as a man, so he rounds up a group of his men so that they can get revenge. In the interim, Lu and his criminals reach the Ren Tian sect, but stay hidden. The bandit leader hopes to attack after the two fighters have worn themselves out. One of his men reminds him that their weapons was destroyed. All the while, Zhou sits on the cliff, and from behind, Ren thinks that he is sobbing, but when he gets closer, he is stunned to see his prodigy stuffing his face. The stone demon opens up about how lonely and empty he feels even after winning the tournament. He is surprised that the losers had more fun than him. Ren suggests that he go on a date since he's going to be 20 soon. Zhou starts to freak out at the thought of marriage when it gets brought up. Their conversation is interrupted when Zhou is informed that someone is looking for him. By the time Zhou comes to meet his visitor, the ladies are all smitten by Yuan's looks. The old ladies are willing to risk it all for him, while some of the younger women drool over the warrior that stands before them. Xiang is not under his spell and calls him a toy boy who doesn't compare to her Zhou. Yuan challenges the stone demon to a fight as soon as he comes out. The swordsman makes a mistake when he concludes that Zhou is the master of the sect. Ren doesn't mind the idea of that happening because that leaves him free to play around. Yuan doesn't waste time and draws his sword to attack Zhou, but the stone demon dodges his strikes and even stops the blade with his bare hands to end the first exchange. Zhou calls him out for his sudden attack, but Yuan is stunned that he was able to block his red feather sword with just his hands. The stone demon reads the engraving on the blade and informs him that its true name is Red Collar. Yu wants Zhou to use the hula hoop weapon for this fight and throws it to him. He swiftly handles it and tosses it to the illiterate swordsman as it lands on his blade. Yuan returns it and gets offended when Zhou starts to hula hoop. He passes it to Yu, who throws it back at the swordsman. He aggressively deflects it out of anger because he has not come to play around. The bladed hoop travels at a great speed and cuts Yu. Everyone rushes to her side as Zhou gets livid. He tries to get to her, but Yuan stands in his way. The swordsman pauses for a moment when he senses Zhou's aura. Ren already knows that his pupil has lost control, and in that instant, Zhou closes the distance between him and Yuan. He throws a body punch that the illiterate narrowly blocks with his blade, but he still gets pushed back. Ren stops Zhou from continuing his assault as he instructs him to calm down. Zhou comes back to his senses and sees that Yu is fine, as she is more worried about her broken pancakes than her shoulder wound. The stone demon is starting to feel guilty when Yuan starts to cough up natural ketchup as he took internal damage from the punch. The ladies of the city begin to treat Zhou like the villain by throwing food at him for harming their new idol. After a short while, he is covered in a mountain of scraps and is stunned that the people he lives with have turned on him so quickly. Xiang is the only one who tries to protect him, but the pelting of food gets so bad that even their idol takes a watermelon to the head. Zhou can see that Yuan is a pure martial artist and accepts a rematch when he promises to win the next time they fight. Yuan leaves without interacting with his new fangirls, which only makes them crazier. He spots Lu and his men in the bushes. The bandit leader is stunned that someone as strong as Yuan was defeated so badly, but some would say that he was the real winner because the group of ladies chase after him like he's a prime 2012 Justin Bieber. Lu pretends to be a monk again when Zhou spots them. The stone demon apologizes again, but that is interrupted when the boss of the other sect confronts the bandit leader while also threatening to destroy the Rentian sect. Zhou has an irritated look on his face after hearing that. He ends up beating them and getting them arrested by the government. An official formally thanks Ren for his services and even gives some gifts. Lu is on edge, hoping that his monk cover doesn't get blown since they are the real criminals. Later that night, Zhou meets up with Yu to help him find love. He is a little disheartened when he realizes that she has taken him to the biggest pleasure house in the whole city. He tries to hide his face as he enters to the warm welcome. The stone demon also figures that she brought him to this establishment to have his fate read. As he passes through the halls, he meets Yuan, who has also come to have his fate told to him. Their conversation is interrupted when Zhou spots a lady behind a fan. From what he can see, he feels like she might be the one. Sadly, the fan comes down to reveal a woman with a face like an old lady boy from Thailand. Zhou loses all hope, and the old lady also berates him for not being a paying customer. He is saved when Yu calls him up to meet Nalan the Oracle for free. Yuan overhears and calls him a shameless hypocrite. All the while, it is revealed that Xiang noticed that something has been wrong with Zhou recently, so she has decided to follow him to get more information. She is devastated that he came to such an establishment and thinks of a whole situation where he meets his true love in there and starts a family, leaving her out. Xiang's nightmare is stopped when Ren taps her shoulder. She snaps at him, but he tells her that he was only conducting a wellness check. The Grandmaster gets upset, but she apologizes and explains the situation to him. He decides to enter to make sure that his top disciple doesn't make a mistake when it comes to love, but he turns away from the entrance because he's too embarrassed to go in. During that interim, Zhou gets nervous waiting and starts to overthink about his appearance. He gets more flustered when Nalan calls to him, so he overhypes himself when giving his introduction. The stone demon is taken aback by how beautiful Nalan is when she comes out. He blushes a little when she calls him handsome. Yu puts Zhou's case forward about how he wants to find love and marriage to the Oracle. Yuan manages to sneak into the meeting and introduces himself. He states that he also came for advice. Nalan informs him that there are no shortcuts to martial arts, so he must keep on trying to pass through his roadblock. The illiterate swordsman interprets this as him needing to continually challenge Zhou till he defeats him. Zhou is told that what he's looking for is right in front of him. He looks at Yu as she cluelessly eats a pastry. However, the idiot turns to Yuan in horror, thinking that his fate is tied to the swordsman. From their reactions, Nalan wonders if the two men understand her reading. Meanwhile, Ren and Xiang find a respectable way to enter the establishment. Xiang is disguised as a servant. The Grandmaster quickly abandons her when his convictions falter. Xiang gets embarrassed and tries to run out, but she is dragged into a room by Fan, who shows interest, but she punches him in the face. The guy gets annoyed and pulls out a gun on her. His acquaintance doesn't want their shady business deal to get exposed, so he excuses himself. Ren's side quest doesn't last long when he's kicked out of the room for being a bad board games player. Back upstairs, the lads are still trying to process their readings, but that comes to an end when they hear female screams coming from below. Zhou jets down to find Xiang beating Fan, but she tries to behave like the damsel in distress by making Fan point the gun at her when she sees Zhou. He's confused to see her at such a place, but before she can fully explain, government officials bust in when they are tipped off about a lead on the case they are investigating. They instruct all the men to squat outside with their hands on their heads. Zhou is stunned to see Ren in the lineup, but the master is so ashamed that he tells his star pupil that he has the wrong guy. The captured men are told that a habitual criminal has stolen the belly bands of some ladies. The victims are brought out to inspect the suspects. They start with Ren and assume that he is guilty given how crusty and old he is. Zhou catches their attention when he expresses his shock that his master could be capable of such a thing. The ladies also judge his appearance and also assume that he must be guilty too. However, their tune completely changes when they get to Yuan. They berate the officials for arresting him and assure him that they believe that he is innocent because they are all attracted to him. They even promise to get him released, but he just wants the women to leave him alone. The master and student are salty that Yuen is getting special attention from the ladies. Joe can't believe his eyes when he notices a piece of the belly band hanging from his master's sash. The officers give the captives a chance to get some food. Joe starts to cry when he recalls all the lessons his master taught him. He doesn't want to see Ren punished, so he gets close to him and pushes the belly band back into his sash so that it is hidden. Joe falls in love at first sight when he meets a female sergeant called Ji, and she seems to be a fan of Joe. The stone demon gets flustered and falls on her when he tries to introduce himself. As he apologizes for his blunder, some officers bring Fan as their culprit. He thinks that he has been arrested for having the gun, but he protests the accusation that he also stole the belly bands. He ends up accepting the fact that he was disturbing public order. Ji apologizes to the master and student for the misunderstanding. Joe's heart starts to race when Ji asks him to meet at the mirror lake outside the city. Xiang gets furious that the man she likes is about to go on a date. The day of the meeting comes, and Ji is a little stunned to see him in a traditional warrior's outfit. She has a positive reaction to it, which makes him happy that he listened to his master's advice. The two head back to the sect to meet with Ren. Xiang brings some tea for their guest. She gets annoyed thinking that Joe is about to get married to Ji and makes a weird gesture that makes everyone look at her like she is a weirdo. Ji reveals why she wanted to meet with Joe. The government is understaffed, and she would like to have a trustworthy sect to help them pick up on the slack. Ren feels sorry for Joe that this whole thing had nothing to do with her being romantically interested in him, but he gives his top student a chance to win her heart by recommending him to help Ji with her work. She excitedly holds his hand that she gets such a capable asset. Xiang almost breaks the tray as she channels her frustrations into it. The stone demon later meets with Ji to start his work. He is motivated to aid in getting their city rid of the bad guys. Joe is introduced to the rest of her unit. He quickly realizes that the reason her unit feels so overwhelmed is because they are getting involved with things that don't require their attention. For example, helping an old woman cross the road or locking down the whole city because one lady lost her handkerchief. Joe continues to patrol with Ji, and she thanks him again for the help. She reveals that she is in law enforcement because her father was a thief who lost his life to the government. She wanted this job to make criminals turn over a new leaf. Her narration of her backstory ends when she spots a local bully called Shui in the city. This is strange because the guy is normally in the countryside, and he has committed many crimes. He is also wanted by the imperial court for his illegal activities. Ji has no intention to let him escape. She is a little hesitant because she heard that Shui has been getting help from the snake sage, who has a bad reputation and is notorious for being good at using poison. The sage's whereabouts are unknown, and they don't know his face. Ji marks the location of their target so that the other officials from the government surround the area when they see it. The duo proceed into the pub to further investigate and overhear Shu's conversation with the sage. The village criminal tells his mentor about his business idea to start a snake farm, because their meat is becoming very popular recently. He wants the sage's knowledge about how he tends to snakes so that they can partner up and make a fortune. Ji tries to get closer to hear more, but she does it in the most obvious way possible. Even her targets get uncomfortable when she rolls across the floor to their location. The criminals freeze for a moment and pretend that they didn't see her. Ji returns to her table and takes a sip of Joe's tea because she has finished her own. The loveless loser retrieves his cup because if he drinks from the same spot as Ji, it is like he has given her an indirect kiss. He clearly took inspiration from R. Kelly. The weirdo smiles at the cup, happy that such an opportunity has come. A message from the government is sent to the duo via throwing knife. Joe deflects it, thinking that it was an assault on them. Sadly, the blade bounces off the walls and hits the sage in the head. Shui gets enraged because the sage was his uncle, so he orders his two bodyguards to deal with the duo. Ji tells Joe to go get backup while she holds off the big guys, but she gets taken out with one shot as soon as she dashes in. The stone demon still holds the cup that has his first kiss on it, but he uses his other hand to catch Ji. Shui launches an axe, forcing Joe to block with his cup hand. The extra tension makes him squeeze too tight, causing the cup to break. He loses his temper and beats the criminals. Ji thanks him for the help, but he just wants her to drink from the new cup he's holding. Meanwhile, Sui is captured and taken away, but the officers feel like they are forgetting something. They brush it off, but their intuition was right because they forgot to also apprehend the sage, as the knife only knocked him out. The following day, Joe wakes up with high spirits and informs Ren that he's heading out to help Ji solve some more cases. Xiang is upset because she doesn't want him to get too close to the sergeant. The master is just happy that this leaves him free to play his board games. Joe hops down the mountain with his breakfast in his mouth, excited to see Ji. They meet sooner than expected when the sergeant's horse almost tramples over him, but he manages to hold it off. She picks him up, and as they head to work, Joe thinks about some of the unsuccessful interactions he has had with some of the people they were supposed to be helping. He hopes that he can do something to impress her on this theft case. They arrive at Yu's house to Joe's surprise. He wonders if her father named Hong filed a report. His confidence increases because if that is the case, he's hoping that he will say positive things about him. He prays that this will help win Ji's heart. That doesn't go to plan when Hong does the exact opposite by calling the stone demon a criminal. Hong sits and informs them about his missing axe heads. Joe gets nervous and basically denies exactly what happened to the axes without being asked a question. This only makes Ji and Hong suspicious. They move on to interrogate some witnesses, but in the end everyone points to Joe as the thief. He reminds Yu of the axes she melted from her dad's workshop. He's trying to cover for her because he is worried that she might go to jail. Yu doesn't think that it's such a bad deal because this means that she could get free food for the rest of her life. Joe is handcuffed by a disappointed Ji. He tries to explain, but Yu comes forward and reveals what really happened. The stone demon gets moved that she was willing to defend him. She reminds him that it's for the free food. Hong still blames Joe and wants him to be arrested. He somehow manages to avoid jail time and later skips to work one day because he thinks that Ji has finally asked him out after he helped solve so many cases. He bumps into Ji again, which just makes his day better since this means he gets to ride into town with her. However, his plan is ruined when it is revealed that Yu got to her first, so she's getting the lift. The trio arrives in town where it is revealed that Joe is not good with horses and doesn't even know how to ride one after falling off a horse when he was a kid. He landed in a cave where he found a secret book on how to heal the bald. They walk through the market having small talk when Joe is suddenly attacked by some snakes, but he vanquishes them. Fang the Snake Lord comes out impressed by Joe's skills. He is the master of the Snake Sage, and he's content that his student lost to a worthy opponent. The sage is wheeled out in a vegetated state. Ji immediately apprehends the sage when his identity is confirmed. She praises Fang for his good work, but the Snake Lord makes it clear that he has come for revenge. He throws a smoke bomb so that he can attack from a hidden place, but Joe showcases his skills when he blows away the smoke, along with the snakes that Feng was trying to unleash on them. The shockwave also leaves the Snake Lord defeated and disheveled. The stone demon is later hit with another blow to his non-existent love life when he gets word that Ji is leaving the city and is going to the capital. She got a raise after all the good work she has been doing lately. The sergeant thanks Joe for all his help. She is sad to leave since they have only just started to know each other. Joe congratulates her and says goodbye. He asks her if she has ever thought about who she is going to marry. Ji honestly lets him know the topic has not crossed her mind because all that she is focusing on is on how to be the best sergeant. He just hopes that she doesn't forget about them when she gets to the capital. Yu listens in on their goodbye conversation, and she can see that Joe is going to need help to recover from this heartbreak. It is also revealed that she got bitten by one of the Snake Lord's creatures, which seems to be poisoning her. That brings the episode to an end.